Well, it's Halloween, and the ACC has a new schedule out, and I can't decide what I'm more excited about. The prospect of candy coming into my house or the prospect of Cal, Stanford, and SMU coming to Acrisure Stadium. We'll talk about what Pitt's new schedule looks like over the next 7 years after the ACC announced the new schedule matrix yesterday. We'll break it all down right here on the Morning Pitt, the Halloween edition of the Morning Pitt on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. All right, it's the Morning Pitt. It's youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. It's Tuesday, but it's not just any Tuesday. It is Halloween. And I'm not one of those people who is like, I love Halloween. Halloween's like my favorite moment of all. It's the best holiday of the year and all that stuff. I don't really get all that wild about it. Don't get too crazy with it. I look forward to handing out the candy. Look forward to eating the candy. That's all well and good. And this year I have something extra to look forward to because we'll be doing a live Panther-Lair show tonight. Don't forget, 8:30 p.m. tonight, we'll be live for this week's Panther-Lair show since Pitt's got a basketball game tomorrow night. Exhibition game against UPJ is tomorrow night at the Peterson Events Center. We'll be there to cover it, and we'll have lots of coverage for you from that. But it kind of overlaps with our previously planned and previously scheduled 8:30 p.m. Wednesday night live stream. So since we can't do that, we will go live tonight. Me and Jim Hammett will be hanging out. I'll try and take care of the little problem that I've got here, and we'll be talking a little Pitt sports with you for an hour. So bring your comments and questions tonight, 8:30 p.m. right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. You might be saying to me, Chris, how am I going to ever remember that? How can you change the schedule on me like that? What am I going to do? I'll never remember that you've got a live stream tonight. I have a solution for you, my friend. Like this video and subscribe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Turn on your notifications and then you'll get an alert sent right to your phone whenever we go live. And you don't have to worry about it. Even if you didn't watch this morning's Morning Pitt, you'll get an alert sent to you that says, hey, Panther-Lair's going live right now. Better tune in. And then that way you won't miss it. You won't forget that we're having a live stream. You won't have to miss out and not be able to submit your comments and questions. So definitely get on board for that. Like this video, subscribe, and then, of course, check out the website below, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, and recruiting. You find it all at Panther-Lair.com, and message boards to interact with hundreds and thousands of your closest Pitt fan friends all day, every day, Panther-Lair.com. All right, so the ACC released the new schedule. We knew that was coming out last night, and it did. They had to do something new with the schedule to account for adding SMU, Cal, and Stanford, and they've done that. And they announced the schedule for the next 7 years. And you know what? Good on the ACC for being so optimistic as to, say, hey, we still believe that Clemson and Carolina and Miami and all these other teams will be in the conference in 7 years. But good on them. I think they'll be in the conference in 7 years. We'll see what it looks like. But either way, we have 7 years of schedules here to give you a sense of what Pitt's ACC schedule is going to look like. Most notable, of course, is next year, 2024, when this new schedule setup sort of takes place. And we kind of started there because that's the most immediate schedule. And the thing that sort of stands out to me the most is partially what the schedule looks like, but also what changed. So they kept, I guess we should even back up from there. The first thing I would say is what they did for protected rivals, because they decided that teams should still have protected rivals in the ACC going forward. And of course, Pitt got who you would expect: Boston College and Syracuse. They just can't stop. They can't stop giving Pitt Boston College and Syracuse. And this was going to be, I think in the last changed arrangement, which started like this year, they were going to go with, it was going to be Pitt with Boston College, Syracuse, and Virginia Tech every year. Well, they canceled out Virginia Tech, and it's actually kind of sad. You won't see Pitt against Virginia Tech until 2026. Maybe 3 seasons. 2 seasons, I guess, without a Pitt Virginia Tech game after we've had them every year since 2012. It's become sort of a regular part of the routine, and now we won't see them for a long, there it goes. We won't see them for a long, long time. I felt that keep almost falling off, but it was a good bit to start the show with. Virginia Tech was just one of those annual opponents, and they were making it a protected rival under the old setup, but now you'll only have two protected rivals, two teams you're guaranteed to face every year. And it's going to be Boston College and Syracuse, the other two. They just can't stop putting these former Big East teams together. Not Miami, of course. They wouldn't count Miami as that. Everyone tries to pretend like Miami wasn't a member of the Big East at one point, that they've always been a long-time ACC member. Well, Virginia Tech, not so much. Pitt, Boston College, Syracuse certainly all get lumped together. And now that they went from three protected rivals down to two, now it's just Pitt and Boston College and Syracuse. So for the next 7 years, you're going to get Boston College and Syracuse alternating home and home. You start off in 2024 at Boston College and home against Syracuse. And that was how it was originally scheduled. That's how it was scheduled under the three protected rival, or whatever they called it, setup. Pitt was always going to go to Boston College next year and have Syracuse at home. They also had a road trip to Carolina and a home game against Virginia on the schedule, and those have stayed the same. But then they changed the other four. And this is largely what you see, that for the first, the last new arrangement only went through like 2026. And so when you look over those 3 years of what they kept and what they changed, it seems like they tried to keep 4 games that had already been scheduled, and then they kind of mixed up the schedule with the other 4. That's more or less how it went. So Pitt was supposed to host NC State and Virginia Tech next year. Virginia Tech series is scrapped. They won't see Virginia Tech until 2026. The NC State game, they actually moved forward a year to 2025. So NC State, who has not been to Acrisure Stadium, at the time it was Heinz Field, since 2017, will not come here until 2025. And that is still not the most egregious scheduling absence that we've seen. Pitt was supposed to go to Georgia Tech next year. That game's been moved to 2025. Pitt hasn't been to Georgia Tech since 2021, so it's been a while, as the poet would say, for that one. We'll look forward to that return trip in 25. And then they were supposed to go to Miami next year. That got turned into a home game in 2025. And then what was added, so that was 4 games taken off the previous schedule for 2024. What they added for next year is a road trip to Louisville, a home game against Clemson, and then 2 matchups with matchups with 2 of the new members of the ACC. A home game against Cal and a road trip to SMU, which is pretty interesting, and we'll talk about that in a second. Pitt gets the third of those new ACC teams in 2025 when they'll go to Stanford, and they're actually going to make 2 trips to Stanford out of the 3 times they're going to face Stanford between 24, 25, and 26. Through 2030, I should say. They're going to face each of these new teams 3 times between 2024 and 2030 over the course of 7 seasons. They'll get 2 games at Stanford and 1 home game. And then with Cal and SMU, they'll face both of those teams twice at home and once on the road. They start off with the home game against Cal next year and the road game against SMU in 2024. And then down the road, they will go to Cal. They go to Cal in 2028. They actually have back-to-back games against Cal. They get them in 24 this year at home. They get them at home in 27 and then go to Cal in 2028. Stanford, they have on the road in 25, at home in 29, on the road in 2030. SMU on the road next year, and then home in 27 and 2030. So interesting road trips there. I've never been to a game at any of those places. I've been to Stanford's campus for a little while, but that was a long time ago. Many more hairs and many more dark-colored hairs ago. Never been to SMU's campus, never been to Cal's campus, never been to a game at Stanford. So looking forward to all of those. Now, I said that NC State going from 2017 to 2025 between trips to Pittsburgh was, an egregiously long period. It's actually, it's not that ridiculous. Florida State is coming here for the first time in 10 years this season in 2023. But even that's not the craziest one. The craziest one is Wake Forest, who the ACC has now moved even further back for its first trip to Acrisure Stadium. I forget what it was in the original scheduling matrix that was released in 2013. When they redid it for these next 3 years, 24, 25, 26, they put a home game for Pitt against Wake Forest in 2025. That has now been moved all the way back to 2028. Pitt joined the ACC in 2013, and they will not host Wake Forest for a game until 2028. That's 15 years. 15 years of shared conference membership, and that team has not come here once. Now, I don't think the ACC cares all that much about Wake Forest. I don't think they're trying to protect them from the harrowing trip to Pittsburgh. It's just wild that they have gone that long without ever coming here. Pitt, of course, went there in 2018. They went there this year, and they'll go again in 2030. So that's 3 trips between 2013 and 2030, whereas Wake Forest will make 1 trip here in 2028. So that was something that got moved. Other notable ones that got moved, the 2025 Pitt was supposed to host Clemson. That game is now happening next year, so they'll host Clemson in 2024. Basically scrapped most of the games against Duke. Pitt will face Duke in the regular season finale this year and won't see them again until 2027. That one will be a home game. North Carolina is going to pretty much disappear. They'll get North Carolina one more time next year. They'll go to Chapel Hill. And then the only other time they face North Carolina over the course of this new 7-year schedule matrix is 2026. So you're going to get a pretty big gap there of 2025 to 2030 with just 1 game between those two teams who have seen each other a lot. Virginia, who came off of Pitt's schedule when the divisions were eliminated, Pitt will get them at home next year and see them once more in 2027. And there's one other. Wake Forest is the other team that Pitt plays twice over this 7-year stretch, 2024 to 2030. There's 4 teams that they'll face twice: Carolina, Duke, Wake Forest, and Virginia. The 2 teams, obviously, they'll face Boston College and Syracuse the most. They play them annually, so that's 7 times over 7 years. The next most, interestingly, is Louisville. Pitt will play Louisville 5 times over the course of those 7 years. 3 of those games on the road, 2 at home. They get Virginia Tech and NC State 4 times each. Both of those evenly split, 2 home and 2 away. Over the course of 7 years, they get 3 games against Clemson and 3 games against Georgia Tech, and 3 games against Florida State and 3 against Miami. As it breaks down, the Miami and Clemson series, those 3-game series will be 2 home and 1 away, and Georgia Tech and Florida State will be 1 home and 2 away. And then I already mentioned Stanford, Cal, and SMU. There's no easy way to build a schedule with 17 teams in it. I mean, it's just not, when you're playing, 8 games a year. I mean, you would think that's 16 opponents. It's 8 games a year. You should be able to cycle through all of them. But I think they want to have a little bit more consistency year to year. I don't think they want it to be that you play 8 teams this year and you play the other 8 teams next year, and then I think they want to have some teams that you'll face in consecutive years. So I mean, obviously the Boston College and Syracuse series, they'll play them in consecutive years. Louisville, they'll get in 24 and 25, and then 28, 29, 30. No consecutive years with North Carolina. They get kind of a broken up NC State series, 25, 27, 29, and 30. Duke is 27 and 29. Wake Forest 28 and 30. No real consecutive series there. Virginia Tech, they'll get them in 28, 29, and 30. Clemson 28 and 29 back-to-back, and so on and so forth. You get some consecutive series, but it's hard to do it a lot, and so. But you want to have as much as you can. You want to have as many years where teams are playing the same team, even just a couple of them, multiple years in a row, to build some kind of interesting storylines and year-to-year narratives, and to make it compelling in some way. Because if you just end up playing, you get these 8 teams this year and you get these 8 teams next year, and then in the 3rd year, you get the first set of 8, and then the next year. I mean, first of all, I think it could get complicated, and pretty much you'd be back to playing in divisions, and even worse divisions, because they wouldn't be actually. It would be convoluted. It would be complicated. I think you want to have some kind of consistency year to year with at least a handful of teams or as many as you can manage, and it's just not easy to do. There are probably better scheduling models out there for how to handle a 17-team conference. Ultimately, it's a ridiculous number. Ultimately, you should probably, I don't know, end up climbing to 20 and playing in two 10-team divisions that are, or really 10-team. I mean, you could almost call them mini conferences broken down into 5-team divisions where you effectively play the other 9. I mean, you go to a 9-game conference schedule. You play the other 9 teams in your conference, in your mini conference, and then the winner of the mini conference goes to the conference championship game. But here we are back talking about divisions again, which they wanted to do away with because it was just so unfair to Florida State. And now look, they did away with divisions and Florida State is running away with the conference. So I guess it all worked out, right? Anyway, we've wasted enough time talking about divisions and whatnot in the past. When it comes down to it for Pitt in the 2000, you start with 2024 is really the place that you look at first because that's next year's schedule. We kind of talked about the ACC teams. They've got pretty much all 12 opponents locked in now. Pitt opens August 31st against Kent State. Then they go to Cincinnati. They host West Virginia. And they close out the month of September. Well, they wouldn't, not necessarily the month of September, but the non-conference schedule, they close out against Youngstown State, an FCS opponent at Acrisure Stadium. Then you get the 4 home games in the conference, Clemson, Syracuse, Virginia, Cal. And you get the 4 road games in the conference, Boston College, SMU, Louisville, North Carolina. Some interesting road trips in there. I think Chestnut Hill, Massachusetts is not all that interesting, but Boston, the city, is. And if you make a weekend out of it, you can have a great time there. University Park, Texas. I mean, that's right in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, right? I think that's where SMU is. Definitely an interesting place to go and check it out. Louisville is one of the underrated. I tell you, this has a very this schedule in 2024 has a real old school Big East vibe to it because you're going to Cincinnati, you're going to Boston College, and you're going to Louisville. Now, Cincinnati and Boston College didn't necessarily overlap in the Big East, but those were sort of staples of the Big East road trips. And I'll tell you the truth, back in the day, covering the Big East, 2005 through about 2011 or whatever it was, 2012. The trips to Cincinnati and Louisville were among the best road trips in the conference. They really were. Reasonable drives and fun cities. I've had a great time in Cincinnati every time I've been there. I've had a great time in Louisville every time I've been there. They're good cities to go to, and I think they'll be a lot of fun. And Nippert Stadium in Cincinnati is tiny. You'll feel like you're in a high school stadium, but there's a certain charm to that. There really is. Louisville, what is it? Papa John's Stadium? Is that still what it's called? Or did they cancel that name? I forget. But Louisville, I mean, the last time I was there, it was a beautiful stadium. It was a great place to watch a game, and I can only imagine it's gotten nicer over the years. Road trip wise in 2025, if you want to look ahead and start making some plans, obviously the big trip is to Stanford, but also there's a Tallahassee game with Florida State on the road that year. There's Morgantown, which is always something worth checking out. Everyone should see it at least once. There's Georgia Tech, which, I mean, that's one of the favorite road trips of this podcast. We often talk about going to Atlanta is a fun time, and that's a good place to go watch a game. So some good road trips there, and also Syracuse. 2026, again, if you're starting to plan some road trips, the one to do that year is Madison, Wisconsin, because Pitt opens its series against Wisconsin that year. Just a 2-game series, 26 and 27. In Madison in 26, at Acrisure Stadium in 2027. That's the road trip to make. Otherwise, you're looking at Boston College, Louisville, Miami, Virginia Tech. Miami, that trip has never really done that much for me. Louisville, I already talked about. Chestnut Hill, whatever. Blacksburg, whatever. I think that year you're going to really target the Madison, Wisconsin road trip. 2027 road trips, not a lot jumps out there. I mean, they're still looking to fill out the non-conference schedule. I can't imagine them adding anything big. They've already got Wisconsin on the non-conference schedule. That game's at home. They also host Connecticut, the first game of a home-and-home series. And they have two, as far as we know, two open non-conference dates in 2027. in conference play on the road. They go to Syracuse, NC State, Virginia, Florida State. I mean, Florida State has a great reputation, but I imagine if you go there in 2000, what was the other year I said they're playing there? 2025. If you go in 2025, I'm guessing you won't feel like you need to go back 2 years later. So I don't know about that as being a good destination. 2028, though, no, you should not go to UConn on the road. I've done that before, and especially not in November. You don't want to be there. And, we said about Chestnut Hill, and they play in Atlanta. That's cool. But road games in 2028 at Clemson and at Cal. Both of those are probably going to be worthwhile trips. I mean, I actually did not make the trip down there in 2016, down to Clemson, but everyone who did couldn't speak highly enough of that experience. And so, that's highly recommended. And then, I want to check out Cal. I want to go hang out in Berkeley. A whole lot of music that I listened to was heavily inspired by the scene around Berkeley and that part of California. So I think I'd like to at least go out and get a look at it. Maybe I'll start saving my pennies now for the 2028 season to see if I can make a trip out to Berkeley. And then 2029, I'm not sure there's anything all exciting there. There's one more. Hold on, my list is missing. I have Syracuse, NC State, and Duke on the road in 2029. There's somebody else Pitt travels to. I apologize. Where do they go? Syracuse, NC State, Duke. I'm missing a game here. I'm looking at Pitt's graphic, but I can't. Where do they go in 2029? Syracuse, NC State, Duke. Oh, Virginia Tech. That's the other one. Virginia Tech. Sorry about that. That was scintillating radio, I know. Nothing really jumps out there, and quite frankly, 2030 brings a return trip to Stanford. So if you didn't get a chance to make the first one, that would be a good one to go to then. But anyway, that's the schedule. Overall thoughts. You knew it was going to be messed up based on adding 3 teams to a 14-team conference. It's hard enough to schedule 14 teams. Now you're scheduling 17 teams. It's going to be near impossible to find anything that actually makes sense. And they were all, I understand why they picked a couple protected rivals for every team. It's just unfortunate that Pitt gets stuck with Boston College and Syracuse. And maybe they're saying it's unfortunate to get stuck with Pitt. That's fine, but I'm not too excited for that. I don't know who I would pick as my ideal protected rivals, but I guess that'll do. Boston College and Syracuse. Louisville and Cincinnati. Actually, no, Cincinnati's not in the conference yet. Get Cincinnati in the conference, or get West Virginia in the conference and pick Louisville and West Virginia as the protected rivals. Who would you like out of the ACC teams to have as a protected rival? 2 teams you would face annually. Maybe Georgia Tech. I don't know. Maybe Syracuse and Boston College is it. Give me Louisville and Virginia or something. All right. Tell me in the comments, who would you like to see Pitt face every year? Be interested to hear what you have to say. Don't forget, live show tonight, 8:30 p.m., me and Jim Hammett, the Halloween edition of the Panther-Lair show. We will be live tonight for an hour of Pitt Sports Talk, talking about all this stuff about ACC schedules, talking about recruiting, football, basketball, everything going on. Then, of course, the basketball game tomorrow night at the Peterson Event Center. Pitt UPJ. Looking forward to that one. So, like this video and subscribe. We appreciate that. And then, tune in tonight for the live show. So we'll check you out there, and then we'll see you tomorrow morning on the Morning Pitt right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.